What made you ghost a friend? When I came home to find the power off. Bill hadn't been paid. We were friends from work. He had split up from his ex, and I needed to be closer to work. We went 50-50 on a rental. He has 3 kids from the previous relationship. With me being the nerd, I agreed to pay the tech bills. Internet, phone, cable TV. He agreed to pay the power as he burned more because his kids were over on access visits. Came home. Dark house. Investigate. He hadn't paid the power for ages because his new girlfriend wanted the money. Then I discovered he wasn't paying his rent either. Same reason. Down $5k. Power, rent. We were evicted. Ghosted. We had been friends for years. Like long-term sisterhood kind of shoot. I did so much for her over the years and didn't even bat an eyelash. I asked her to watch my cat while I went on a 10-day vacation, a cat that she also loved because it belonged to her family before me. She agreed to watch the cat. I even called her about 4 days into my vacation to ask her again to go and check on my cat to make sure it had food/water and a few scritches. When I came home, my cat's water and food bowl were bone dry, and she let out the most tormenting meows I have ever heard. My friend didn't check on her once in the 10 days that I was gone. She played stupid when I confronted her about it and said, "Oh, I completely forgot." That was the beginning of the end. Edit. As for ghosting her, I had to. After the cat incident, she tried to make me feel guilty for being mad at her for it. I think I even ended up apologizing because she was so beside herself. A few more disagreements occurred after that, and I was always put on a guilt trip. I decided that I didn't need that negativity in my life anymore, and I ghosted her. To this day she tries to get back to me. Even through mutual friends, she badmouths me, then tells them how much she misses me. Chick is whack. She started hanging out with a new friend. That's fine. I'm not her only friend. Then while we were hanging out, as pre-planned, she would leave to go hang out with her new friend. Then she'd break plans with me to hang out with her, all while tagging her on Facebook so none of it was being hid. 3 years later she reaches out to me and apologizes. It's genuine as she mentioned insightful things she would have no way of knowing unless she had grown and been very honest with herself. We are friends for another 2 years when she starts to hang out with another new friend. Repeat. Started talking shit about me to my GF and best mate. His dad had a history of drinking problems, and he was starting to exhibit the same behavior. So I suggested we should both take a break from drinking for a while and try to focus on some healthier shoot. He apparently took that as him not the same person, and my GF was the person who changed me. When I realized a lot of the things that made her laugh were at my expense, she thrived off of humiliating me. I was bullied in school, but my worst bully was my best friend. I used to come home and cry to my mom. I would be heartbroken over how my best friend was treating me. Honestly, I don't remember what my mom would tell me, but I wish she would have told me that I was worth way more than the treatment than I received from her, that she was a bad friend and I should drop her, that I had friends who treated me with respect, and that I should spend my time with them, that she would have forbade me from hanging out with her. Anything. I wasted something like 15 years with that girl in that abusive friendship. Slept with other friends GF out of spite. When you realize that they are never really there for you, and your friendship only breeds passive aggressiveness and envy. When I realized the relationship was one-sided, and they only cared about themselves. Yeah, I had a relationship that was really great for a while, but over time I realized they just didn't care much for me anymore. It was always them needing something. I just got out of a relationship like that just before quarantine. 3 years of living together, building a life, and exploring, all for her to decide she'd rather be single because her co-workers told her she should be. Like, frick, I guess I didn't mean that much after all. I loved this girl. She was so clutch for me when my life was in ruins. The issue was that she and I were both addicts at the same time and both came from the same types of affluent families, but for whatever reason, I got clean and I turned my life around while she got worse. She and I were both addicts with eating disorders, alcoholism, and both addicted to Xanax. I got clean and only recently 7 years later have started experimenting with maybe 1 or 2 beers per month if I'm out with my husband. She ended up with this awful guy who she will not give up, who got her hooked on meth. I was there for her for a long time. After rehab and a few arrests, she stayed at my house for a bit on 2 different occasions. But the last time she did, she tore my house apart looking for alcohol which we didn't have, stole my ID so she could get Postmates to deliver vodka to my house, and nearly got us both killed by grabbing and yanking my steering wheel while I was going 80 miles per hour up I-95. I've tried so many times to help her get and stay clean, but she keeps going back to that guy and her triggers are my triggers. I had to distance myself because she was making me relapse. She burned the bridge. For most of the year and a half that she and I started working at the same place, she bullied me, micromanaged me, made me feel left out, and gaslighted me whenever I tried to confront her behavior. It was almost always my fault. Nothing I ever did was right, and she refused to believe that she has control issues or that she was using me as a punching bag. She started doing this thing where she won't text me unless I texted her first, and then get mad if I didn't text her. So, once she quit the job, I stopped texting her. I haven't spoken to her at all since August 2019, and I don't regret it. Every conversation was about them and their lives. They rarely asked or were interested in what I had going on. The selfishness was just too much after a while. I invited an old friend for lunch a couple months back, and this is exactly how it went. We've more or less gone our own paths, so we have different friends and schedules, etc. But at one point we were best friends. Amongst other stuff, this just solidified my decision to let things die off naturally. She didn't ask a single question about me when there's plenty to go off of, but I listened to a lot about her. She was really interested when it came to my jobs and how much I was making. When I realized she was maybe my best friend, but I was not her. In fact, I was only useful to her. That realization hits like a sledgehammer if you encounter some event or outing where you expected an invite and the friend just acted like you didn't exist. He knocked on my door one night and said, "Let's go for a drive." This wasn't that odd, since I love driving to cool my head. So we start driving, and maybe 10 minutes in, he starts directing me on where to go. He asks me if I mind making a quick stop. I'm annoyed but say sure. We end up at this sketchy house in the middle of nowhere, and my buddy goes inside, but tells me to wait in the car. Almost 45 minutes later he comes back out and says we got to go to the bar. It takes me about 10 seconds to realize this pose went in there to get coke and was already high. So I tell him that I'm not feeling it tonight and drop him off at his place. Spoke to him once after that when he wanted to hang, and I told him I'm Nevada's errand boy. Never gave a shoot if he got the message, because I haven't spoken to him since. My best friend growing up was a kid I lived next door to from the age of 9 until 18. At school, he would pretend not to know me so he could seem cool to the popular kids. He would invite me places and ditch me. He would break plans so he could free up time to hang with his cooler friends. That shoot got real old, real fast. When I was 18 I moved to the other side of town. We were growing apart more and more, but I would still try to hang out with him when I could. Well, one day he asked me to come over to his house and play Tony Hawk's Pro Skater when it first came out. I was so pumped that I walked 3 miles to his house only to be told that he was going to go hang out at his other friend's house instead. But could I babysit his brothers and sisters? Needless to say, things weren't the same after that. I stopped answering his calls. He would stop by and I would leave just to avoid him. He would make plans to hang out and I never bothered going. I just gave up on trying to be friends with that guy. I tried so hard for almost 10 years just to be a good friend to him, and he just pushed me to the wayside. Maybe I'm an asshole for stooping to his level, but I don't care anymore. I told her not to tell anyone, so she told everyone. Too much insult humor really fricked my esteem edit. since I can't possibly respond to all these and keep my sanity. We were friends for a while, and it was almost always insult humor, and that combined with a shootstorm of other things just got to me, and I took it personally and ended up blowing up at them. Now I really don't have any way to talk to them and don't care anymore. Too much drama. Told a sob story in order to garner sympathy points. Story didn't check out and no one believed her, so she got even more angry about it. Decided to book it because her stories and blame games were getting too much for me. Guy told me you'll never be a good teacher. After 2 years of unemployment following my graduation with a teaching degree, I realized the bastard had meant every joking insult he'd ever said to me. Her fiance was arrested and did jail time for possession of child pornography. When he got out, she married him and talked about how excited she was to have children with him. Edit. I understand that people are concerned about any children that are born to these people. I'm concerned too. That said, I cut off contact with her 6 years ago. I can't FB stalk her due to her privacy settings. I also moved a few time zones away, so I'm not in the same social circle as her anymore either. All I can do is hope that the people who are still in her orbit do their due diligence. It sucks, but that's the option available to me. When I was in college, I and a friend M went out drinking with a mutual friend F. We drank enough to decide to all crash at my apartment, which was within walking distance of the bar. My female friend passed out on the sofa. As soon as we got there, I shot the shoot with my friend for about 10 minutes before he starting talking about my passed out girl, looking at her and saying things like I could frick her right now and she'd never know. I'm ashamed that I didn't kick him out. What I did was stay up all night sitting in a chair next to her just to make sure he didn't grape her. Frick that guy. Needless to say, I ghosted him after that night. Edit. Thanks for the awards, guys. To those saying maybe he was just mouthing off, no. The things he was saying were just way over the line. Freaked me out. I kept trying to get him to go sleep it off in my bedroom, but he kept saying nah, I'll just crash in this chair next to her. Depression. Keeping up communication is rough sometimes. A day of not replying to a message can become a week when you don't know how to explain that you just couldn't be around people that day, which can become a month when it always seems impossible to reach out and explain where you'll be. Thankfully my friends are the understanding sort and don't give me too hard a time, but I still feel like an asshole. She flirted with me and didn't stop. I have a GF, and I didn't need that drama. He became obsessed with me, telling me he loved me and things in front of my friends, basically acting as if I was his girlfriend. Became super angry and jealous whenever I talked to my other friends' guys. Told me that when I visited him, he was in the US and in Canada, I would have to sleep in his bed. After I made it very clear we were not nor ever will be a thing, he then started reaching out to my friends to get them to convince me to talk to him again. They told him to shove it after they found out why I ghosted him. It's been a few months now, I haven't regretted the decision. The fact she wasn't putting effort in our friendship and just texted if she needed something, and she always made me feel like I'm not welcome and wanted. So, nope, thanks. When I realized she liked hating things more than liking them. I hate beer, hate EDM, hate Marvel, hate Channing Tatum, hate football. These are all things she said. It's okay that we don't enjoy the same things, but she'd go out of her way to let me know she hated something and rarely talked about what she liked. Whenever I would talk about feeling stressed and my mental health not being in an optimal condition, she would say something along the lines of, oh come on, you don't have actual problems. There are people out there that actually have depression, anxiety, etc. She always downplayed the struggles I would be going through, just because it wasn't the worst possible thing that could happen. I never thought this would receive so much support. Thank you everyone for your kind words. This means a lot. She stirred between everyone. It was just a game to her to ruin friendships, people that she wasn't even close friends with. Nearly 10 years later, and I'm told she still tries it on with a wider circle, or rather, her husband's circles, as she no longer has any friends of her own anymore, but they all treat it like a joke and ignore her, going so far as to warn others in a jokey manner. Multi-level marketing. She was pretty aggressive with selling Monad to me and a couple other friends we shared, so much so that she started posting passive-aggressive messages about finding out who your true friends are when they don't support you blah blah blah. I was trying to be nice and purchased 2 bottles to support her just once, and when she charged me, she had tacked on a bunch of fees that she didn't mention before. $100 spent to learn that real friends don't strong arm you to buy and upcharge you their crap products. I hate to say it, but I've ghosted a couple of friends. It was after years of friendship and I realized that everything was about them. The friendship was one-sided, and I felt undervalued. It got to the point that, even though we were best friends, they had no idea what was happening in my life. A lot more happened that I don't care explaining, but I stopped talking to them after 11 years. I was disinvited from his wedding, in which I was a groomsman, because he found out I wasn't a Christian. We'd been friends for a decade up until that point. My best friend of 8 years told me I couldn't be in her wedding because I was an atheist and my being there would damn their marriage to hell. We stopped being friends that day. The kicker, the reason she got upset about my lack of religion is because I had recently been in a mutual friend's wedding, and apparently I didn't close my eyes during the prayer. If she saw that my eyes weren't closed. Her eyes weren't closed either, hypocrite. She had a negative experiences with a lot of things to the point that talking to her was like walking on eggshells. I hope she's doing alright, and I feel bad I stopped talking to her, but I had to choose what was better for me. I was that friend about 5 years ago. I was a total piece of shit, and being ignored by my only ever friends was the hardest thing I ever went through. I'm surprised I'm still alive to see the end of it, but they did the right thing to do that. I was constantly bringing them down and just generally being a piece of shit. It still affects me to this day. I'm constantly paranoid while talking to pretty much anyone that I'm being a dick. I used to do it without knowing I was doing it, so if I didn't know then, how could I now? But ultimately it's the right decision. It made me get myself together and try to make a conscious effort to improve. I don't think I'll ever be fully comfortable in conversation again, but if it's better for other people, then it's worth it. We were good friends in high school and he started getting into drugs. At first it was just weed and alcohol, but then he started hanging out with people that I wasn't quite comfortable with, so I transitioned to a new set of friends, and so did he. Fast forward a year or so, and we bump into each other at a college party and he's telling me these stories of being ripped on coke and pills and etc, and I realized that he was putting his life into drugs. A few years later he's arrested for armed robbery for cash and pills, and then when he got out of jail he oughta now has gone. Maybe I could have helped, but now I'll never know. A girl I met in one of my biology labs came off really nice. I didn't really know anyone in the small lab, and she invited me to be study partners, which I gladly accepted. The first study session was at a coffee shop off campus. She complained about her best friend for 3 hours. She was the most negative, entitled person I've ever met. After that semester, I deleted her number and never talked to her again. This happened with multiple people. They tried to tell me I was too sad and depressing not even a month after watching my dad die, and that I should just pretend it didn't happen when I'm around them. I called them out for the truth they are and said if they ever show their face around me again I'd fight them. It was when I lost a job I had a couple of years ago, and she didn't say she was sorry to hear that or ask if I was okay or anything. She ghosted me for a week, and then when I heard from her, she said now that I have this wonderful life, I guess you don't need me. I hardly had a wonderful life. I had lost my job and health insurance and didn't know what I was going to do, but she assumed things were great because I had marked on Facebook that I was going to some activities which had been planned before the job loss. I realized this was not a friend and how incredibly selfish she was. I was really good friends with this girl in 5th grade, or so I thought. When we first met we got along really well, but I started noticing after 2 years that she would go hang out with me when I was with my guy friends, pretend that she was there to hang out with me, push me to the side, and flirt with my guy friends. Now, obviously I could tell that her actions made my guy friends uncomfortable. So I confronted her about it, and she just said in front of my guy friends, "I don't know you, why are you here?" After that, I stopped inviting her to hang out, and she pleaded for forgiveness, but I just ignored her. We were hanging out having a great time and he said, "I always forget how fun you are." Suddenly it occurred to me and I said, "It's like you forget I exist, unless I'm right in front of you." He laughed and agreed, thinking I was joking or something, but it was very real. Unfortunately I stuck around for a few more months, but this was definitely the tipping point. Otherwise for most of my friends, it's just the same as what other people have said. I shouldn't have to do the relationship maintenance all by myself 100% of the time. When my best friend got her now husband, a guy I had known and chilled with through mutual friends, a decent guy I think, she became incredibly toxic. Would put me down constantly for small things I did in the past, poor MacUbe skills, getting too drunk, people it dated etc. Her partner blamed me for her promiscuity. I knew it wasn't healthy, but he became her fiance and the wedding wasn't gonna be too far down the road, so I wanted to be there to support her, since we were friends for so long. First, she scheduled it on her/our Thanksgiving. I study in America and she knew this wasn't a holiday off school for me, therefore attending would be difficult, and we had talked about mutually convenient dates, her idea, not mine, so that I could attend everything. I also TBH thought this date was kind of selfish, more generally speaking, to pick for a wedding, but I wasn't going to tell her that, because I didn't feel I should have to point it out, and I know this is selfish, but it's an important holiday to me also, and I prefer to spend it doing the traditions myself, and my spouse had started, so even if I was off school, I would probably wanted to stay in America with him, rather than fly home. She also continually made comments about my financial situation in my relationship, about my partner, and how he doesn't care about my well-being etc. but hers does, and how he should be paying for me to live and go to school etc. Absolutely crazy shoot. I just couldn't do it anymore. Realized seeing her texts pop up made me feel the same way you imagine/feel in an abusive romantic relationship, and I just couldn't be present in the relationship anymore. I didn't technically ghost her. I just said I can't commit to the events anymore, and I was sorry. It was all too much to balance with school, but I wish you them the best. I feel we're just growing in different directions. Naturally, she didn't take well to it or would. We didn't talk after that day, IDK. I thought I was justified, but I still feel pretty guilty most of the time. I did bail on my best friend's wedding, after all. A while back, I asked my mom why she had stopped hanging out with one of her good friends. Like, they'd do coffee dates. My mom would sometimes play bass in her band. Their drummer was another family friend. Her reply, I realized that every time we hung out, she was complaining about her other friends to me. It made me wonder what she was saying to them about me. She cheated on my best friend when they were dating. The three of us had known each other since high school and they started dating in college. She got into grad school in another state and I moved in with him since he needed a roommate. About 2 months into the long distance she cheats on him, and I just stopped talking to her after that because she hurt him so much. I was the person who got ghosted from my best friend. I literally have no idea why it happened. We lived together, and she didn't even wish me a happy birthday despite being friends since 9th grade. We graduated college and she hasn't spoken to me since. When I realized I was only their friend because they had no other friends who would put up with their bullshit. Addicted to below, afflicted because they were gay, nobody had any problem with this, and constantly said they were going to kill themselves. I was patient for longer than anyone else, and even said how I was feeling. They would get coked out, and text me about 20 times throughout the night, almost every night. I blocked them 3 days later. An ex-friend of mine was gay, and developed a huge crush on me, but couldn't take a hint, no matter what I tried. When I told it to their face that I wasn't gay, so I couldn't be interested in them, they took it badly and replied with, I only think you're gay because everyone else does, which made me paranoid about what other people thought of me, because even though there's nothing wrong with being gay, there's nothing more awkward than people thinking you're gay when you're not. I was still prepared to forgive him until he set me up for failure with my crush at the time as some kind of twisted revenge antic.